After they ate and took a long nap, they walked along the paths that he'd worn over the years. He'd even taken the shortcut through the little cascading waterfall and creek, pointing out landmarks. There was a lot of land here. It would take a while for her to learn how to navigate the land. Of course, there was no sign of humans having been there recently. "Tabby, it's getting dark. We should go back to the cabin and start toward Asheville in the morning." They had walked all 300 acres, twice, and even searched the back of the property along the barbed wire fence. But he didn't expect to find the woman here. He'd smell a corpse. In fact, he had no idea where Greg would have left the body, or if he'd left a body at all. "How did I get so far away from Mama?" She frowned. For an 8-year-old, she was a smart and intuitive kid. "I don't know. I found you just outside in the driveway." He almost added in that she must have walked there but decided against it. It was one thing to engage in half-truths to avoid looking like a lunatic, but another to lie, no matter how small of a lie. "I remember a man, a really hairy man, telling me that I would live. He just—" She frowned, pinching her nose. "He just set me out." Blaine took in a breath. Her full memory was returning. But how could she remember being set out? She wasn't conscious. Or was she? Perhaps she was just so exhausted that she lay limp and wasn't truly out. The wolf healing was both blessing and curse. "I call him Alpha. He's a—" he almost said bastard, but thought better of it. "A real bully." She turned and gave him such a look of doubt that he was reminded of his grandmother. "Bully? He tosses a child out of his car, and you say bully. And if I didn't know better, I'd swear that one of them turned from a wolf into a man." "I call it wolf healing," he said very quickly. "You'll remember more and more, but for now, we should get back before nightfall." Her night vision would kick in, and it would scare her while they were in the woods. A few useful things of the wolf carried over. Seeing better in general and having super smell were the main two, not to mention healing fast. Her sense of direction would be heightened. She could probably lead them back to the cabin even though it was her first day here. "Wolf healing." She looked confused. "I need to find my mother, which you can't do in the dark on an empty stomach." He didn't want to force her. He took in a breath. "Tabby." He shook his head. It was only a matter of time before she accepted what she remembered. After all, she'd already mentioned the attack on her mother. "Please, I am trying to help. We can come back out in the morning if you like." Then an emotion came over him. He couldn't put his finger on it. It felt warm. He knelt, reaching out to her. "Look, I know I am not a parent, but I am like you in that I remember things that have happened to me that are hard to believe, and you remember what you saw. I know you do because the wolf healing heals everything, even if you don't want it to." Meaning protective memory blocks that her psyche erected to protect her from what happened would soon come down. He'd really like her to have a more comfortable place for that to happen. The middle of the forest wasn't the best place. Her hands shook as she began to hyperventilate. He didn't move toward her, afraid of frightening her. She'd also been through a traumatic event, as well as witnessing the death of her mother. She stood there for a second before running into his arms. "They left me. Rolled me out of the back of the truck like a sack of mulch. They killed my mother." She bawled into his shoulder for what seemed like an eternity. He stood as she clung to him. "I can carry you for a little bit if you like." He wasn't sure how far he could carry her. She continued to cling to his waist. "What did they do to me?" She put her hand over her throat. "One turned into a wolf and bit me. The jerk! He bit. That was real. It happened." Her eyes widened. "He bit me and tried to kill me. The other one stopped him. The big one said to bring me to you, that you would take care of me. But I was sleeping and bleeding. Why can I remember this? How can I remember this?" "The wolf healing. Look, I can explain quite a bit, but I'd really like to get back to the cabin." She nodded, tightening her arms around his neck. "There is one good thing. Sniff. You should be able to smell the stew. I didn't clean up the bowls." She stopped. "What?" He took in a deep breath, allowing the smell of the stew to fill his nostrils. "You can smell better than other humans. And as you remember, you were injured, but now you are healed." He tried to make it sound like being a werewolf wasn't as bad as it really was. She took in a deep breath, smiling. "We're close." "No, we aren't. You can smell that good." He walked toward the cabin, up the hill. She wasn't as heavy as he thought. Do you think you feel up to pointing the way? He didn't want to diminish what she was feeling, but he was also aware that there were no streetlights here. Maybe he should prepare her for the sudden change in vision once the sun went down. Did you know you'll be able to see better in the dark, too? She buried her face in his t-shirt. That's okay. He patted her back while trying to balance her. There's nothing wrong with being horrified by what happened. The big one was right. I'll take care of you. He'd have to add a new storage room and clean out the current one for Tabby's bedroom. Thank goodness I kept this. He held up his extra motorcycle helmet. We can stop in town and get one that is just your size. It would be big, but it would get them to Oak Ridge, where he could buy a new one for Tabby. He didn't want to risk driving all the way to Asheville when she had an ill-fitting helmet. She looked at it like he was holding up a rotting fish. What is that for? I don't have a car. I have a touring bike. Don't worry. It has a trailer so we can bring some of your things back with us. We are riding bicycles? Her eyes widened. There are so many hills. He laughed. No, ma'am. I have a motorcycle. What? Her eyes widened in delight. I have never been on a motorcycle. She clapped and jumped up and down. Can I see? Grab your backpack. Make sure the apartment key is in it. Let's go. He motioned for her to follow him out. She skipped behind him, dragging the backpack as he went to the large storage shed. Ta-da! He opened both doors to reveal his only prized possession, a restored Honda Goldwing. Cool. She looked out from around his back, like the bike was scary. What if I fall off? He hadn't thought of that. You wait here. Let me pull the bike out, and we'll see where you are the safest. He pulled the bike out and attached the trailer. He helped her onto the rear passenger seat. Okay, he said, getting off. I'm not comfortable with that. He helped her move forward and then got back on behind her. He pulled out the crow's foot pegs. Can you reach these? With him behind her, she could reach them. Keep your feet here. If they come off, let me know, and we'll pull over so you can put them back on. Also, if you get tired, let me know, and we can pull over. We'll get a new helmet. He couldn't rent a car. His license was still good, but he'd given up his credit cards. Okay, she said, smiling as she pulled the shield down over the helmet. He was uncomfortable to drive that far with her on the bike, so he'd have to take back roads and stop often so she didn't fall asleep. They drove to the motorcycle shop in Oak Ridge. She had fun trying on the helmets. She chose a black one with a pink X on it, and they headed to Asheville. Finally, they arrived at the apartment. Mama! Tabby called as they entered. Mama! Blaine didn't think her mother would be there. After all, she would have opened the door for them. What's your mother's name? Amy. Tabby ran into the bedroom on the left. Mama! She ran back out, tears in her eyes. She's really gone, isn't she? Blaine took a breath. He suspected so, but didn't want to say it. Do you have any other relatives? It was just me and Grandma. Tears ran silently down her face. Mama didn't have her own place until I moved in with her. She said she couldn't travel anymore because of me. He hugged her. I got you. I am not going to let anything bad happen, if I can help it, he added, because he knew what would happen at the end of the month. We can come back in a few weeks to see if she is here. He didn't want to leave a note. That could bring an innocent person to his home, and if they found the note during the cycle, it could go horribly wrong. She nodded, pulling off her backpack and heading into her room. Need any help packing your toys? He asked after noticing she was stuffing clothes in her backpack. What toys? She pulled a little suitcase with ponies on it out from under her bed. He looked around. She had books, but only a handful of toys. Let me get them. He picked up a yo-yo, a Ziploc bag full of fashion doll clothes, and a teddy bear. We can get some toys later. Every child should have toys. They spark imagination and help build social skills. Not that she would need a lot of social skills, but she needed to be prepared. Thanks, she said, looking at her room. Sickening. Let's get out of here. What's sickening? She'd leave me here for hours and hours while she trekked off to shoot pictures. She put on her backpack and pulled her little suitcase. The one time I cried and begged her to take me with her. And this happens, she pointed at her neck. Sickening. Blaine followed her, unsure of what to say. Don't you want anything else? He looked around. There were trail cameras. We could use these. He picked them up along with a laptop. He could take pictures of them as wolves once he figured out how to use them. He picked up a case, and upon opening it, he found a cinema-quality camera. Just the pictures of Grandma. Tabby parked her suitcase by the TV. She put a photo album in the case. Ready? Blaine nodded, looking around. He picked up a photo of what had to be her and her mother and slipped it into the camera case. She would want it eventually. He packed the 2 trail cameras and the laptop into another camera case. Ready, he said, picking up the 2 cases. They loaded the trailer. He closed the lid and locked it. We really should do one more walkthrough before we go, just in case. She nodded, reaching for his hand. He took it. She took some brushes and combs from the bathroom. Blaine grabbed a few more things he thought she would like. He held up a cookbook. Anything that your mom makes that we should... That was Grandma's. She reached up to take it with her free hand. Whew. I would have been sad if I forgot that. That's why it's always good to walk through one more time. Let's head back. You let me know what recipes you like. We can get the stuff for them at the store before we head back. We can make some of them. It was a small gesture, but any comfort he could give her during this loss he'd give without hesitation. Oh yes. She perked up considerably. I would really like that.